Okay, this is it. This is it. This is the take. I can't back out now. Hello everyone. So I'm gonna review Braveheart. Do you know, epic adventure. It's got Mel Gibson. I don't even know if I can do a Scottish accent. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if I was wearing a kilt, which is kind of funny. It's like Scottish people are Scottish men are the only men who wear skirts, and they call it a kilt. I think one of my great grandparents was Scottish, but see, I don't really know my background other than that. My parents and grandparents are Australian, but other than that, it could be. I think Reed might be Irish, but maybe it's English as well. I don't know what background I've got. I don't really care. I'm just bringing it up because yeah, I'm Scottish, and also because a lot of people want to have some kind of like my people have been oppressed or well, I don't have any people. Or, my Scottish people were oppressed a long time ago, it seems. I don't know. Anyway, just before I get into the review, I want to get a better setup, okay? I know the quality, I don't know how good it is, the sound and the audio, not the sound and the audio, the sound and the video, or the audio and the video, the sound and the image, whatever. I'm trying to get something better, but for now, this will do. It's just me talking about movies, okay? But yeah, I like this movie. It's very cool, very epic. There's some big battle scenes. As my understanding is, it's not very historically accurate, which I'll get into that in a minute. But I guess as movies go, it's exciting and it means something. It's about freedom and fighting for something. I actually really like the idea that William Wallace, the way the movie presents it, again, this might not have anything to do with what actually happened, which it seems, but that seems to happen. You get these myths, or in the movie, there are myths about William Wallace. Yeah, I've heard he's 7 feet tall and lightning comes out of his ass, all that kind of stuff. I guess in reality, that happens with figures. They can take on a larger than life kind of stature. But my point was that in the movie, he seems quite simple. He meets a girl, he just likes her. He kind of secretly is romantic with her, gets married. It's like he didn't want to be a hero, a rebel or whatever. He didn't want to get into war. That it seems like in a time of peace, he would have just been a regular, normal guy who was quite happy with a regular job. A bit like in The Dark Knight Rises, there's a reference to Gary Oldman. He's a wartime hero. This is peacetime, meaning he's not as useful now. And it's an interesting idea. I think many people have their element, what they're good at. A bit like I don't think everyone's just an extrovert or an introvert. In some contexts I'm out there if there's a camera. But in other situations, I'm very quiet and reserved. It depends who I'm with. With kids, I often play and I often act silly. I've worked as a clown. But with a lot of adults, if they're just sitting and smoking or drinking, I just get bored. I just don't want to hang out. I hate that stuff. And parties, like, if there's music and there's dancing, then I get up and I'll try to dance. But other things. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic here. But it struck me as profound that this guy, it's like if he wasn't dragged into this with his girlfriend being or wife being killed, and then it's basically revenge, and he keeps going, and it's like you know, if Scotland had its freedom, he wouldn't have anything special to do. He might be forgotten, and that idea seems really interesting to me. How many figures throughout history would have been more significant or wouldn't have been significant in another situation? It's like when they don't have a choice, but they just have to do something grand because of the circumstances. Anyway, let's get into the rest of the movie. The action scenes I think are really well done overall. They're very violent, at least at the time. Reminds me a bit of Game of Thrones. That's a TV show that has quite a few similar battle scenes. I also like the way it builds things up. It takes its time, like lets you see how many soldiers there are, and a lot of it feels real. Like you really feel the impacts, and I think a lot of people freaked out that horses got hurt in the film, but like I don't think any were. They did it properly. Like a lot of it just looks real. It's just impressive stunts. So that's kind of cool. It's still exciting to watch. And back for 1995, I don't think there were many movies of that kind. There were epic films back in the 50s and 60s like Ben-Hur and The Ten Commandments, Spartacus, and some of them were pretty cool, but I don't think any really had these kind of big epic action battle scenes presented really realistically and kind of gory. I like the music by James Horner. He's not, I mean, I don't want to just compare everyone to John Williams, who I think is incredible, but yeah, there's not as much going on as in a John Williams score, but I do like James Horner. I find he rips himself off a little bit, which I find annoying, but this movie's got some very nice tunes. I don't want to hum them just because I find them a bit tricky. They're a bit slow. There's one with kind of a flute. I can hear it in my mind, but it's very nice, very kind of romantic, but I don't know. There's like a sadness to it, it's like a forbidden love kind of thing that's never going to be completely fulfilled or something. Anyway, I think most of the music does its job. There's a few different styles. There's some Scottish. I don't know. I don't know how it goes, but a lot of it's not that special. It's mainly that romance theme and a few other kind of themes that are quite nice. I think the directing is very good. Mel Gibson's an interesting director. I think Passion of the Christ I haven't seen in a while, but it's so violent. And if you're gonna make a story about Jesus Christ, why, why? I feel like what would make sense is you focus on everything up to he gets caught, and then okay, we don't need to show the crucifixion. We get it. Maybe you just have a little thing at the end. You should sort of show briefly the idea of it, and then he gets resurrected or something. But instead, he focuses the whole movie on like the crucifixion. Like, what about all the stuff he did in his life? It's kind of weird. And Apocalypto is very interesting. Again, very violent. And Hacksaw Ridge is also very violent. His movies feel realistic, violent. I guess Braveheart, again, it's realistic, but it's not historically accurate, which I should get into soon. So yeah, I may as well go through the things. It seems like it's not that accurate at all. I looked this. I'm no expert, of course. I'm interested in history. That's part of, like, I thought rewatching this might be good to get an idea. Try to, now that I've learnt more about economics and politics and say World War II and some isolated things here and there, I thought I might be able to understand what's going on. But so it's frustrating to find out a lot of it's made up. So for example, anyway, I'm not an expert. I just looked this stuff up. So, but I apparently prima nocte or noctis, which is this idea that the English, I don't know, nobility, they can, if you get married, they can have a night with the wife. They can basically take her and have their way with her on the first night. I think that might be, I get the impression that might be a thing that may have existed in some places at some times, like France, but not in England, not in Scotland at that time, I'm pretty sure. And in fact, it seems like it was not really ever that common, partially because I think it creates instability, a bit like what we see in the movie. I think if I remember correctly, that William Wallace's wife was killed, and that may have been part of what motivated him. Apparently, the character of Robert the Bruce, which is a weird name, two first names, I don't understand that. But Robert the Bruce, his character was fairly realistic, like portrayed as roughly what he was, except I don't think he betrayed William Wallace. I think he was in two minds, and he never fought as a knight for the English army, I don't think. Another problem is the Princess Isabel was like a kid, or is it Isabel or Isabella? She was just a child when all this stuff was happening, so she couldn't have had an affair with William Wallace. I don't think she ever met him, or if she did, it was as a kid again. I don't think she came to Scotland until later, something like that. Anyway, or England. And I'm not sure that her husband, the king's son in this movie, I don't know that he was gay. He might have been. I think he had like 6 kids, or I can't remember. That's an interesting thing in the movie, though, that I want to mention, because it's just kind of funny. Were people really homophobic back then? Maybe that was, I don't know, but it's so funny that he's so obviously gay, and he just gives her, she's so beautiful, and he gives her like a little peck on the cheek. But that seemed interesting to me because I felt like the princess could have saved William Wallace. I feel like near the end, like why didn't she just blackmail that prince? She could have just, the king was too ill to speak, so he can't do anything. What she had to do was bribe this prince to say, tell everyone that the king said to free William Wallace, or to put him in a cell where he's a prisoner for long term and she can free him later, or even just have an affair or something. He can take on some other position. Anyway, if the prince doesn't play along, then she'll expose the fact that he's gay. That seems like it would have been pretty solid. Although, I don't know, by then maybe the other guy had been thrown out the window, defenestrated. I don't think that happened either. Anyway, I'm jumping around here a bit. I do like most of the actors, including Mel Gibson and whoever the guy is at Longshanks. I don't know the actor's name, but the king. He was a good villain. Like you kind of really dislike him. There's a part as well where he says just fire, and they're like, won't that hit our troops, our soldiers as well? Again, I think that was made up. I get the impression that didn't happen. And the Irish, I don't think, met with the Scottish and then, joined up. I don't think that happened. I don't think there were many Irish in that battle. And one of the first battles is called, what is it? Hang on. I think it's the Battle of Stirling or the Battle of Stirling Bridge. And there's no bridge. In real life, there was meant to be a bridge. And that was a really important part of it. So I guess for any historians, they'd probably really bugged by this movie. I've heard also Scottish people probably have mixed feelings, but I think some Scottish people dislike it because it makes everyone think of Scotland as a certain thing. But again, it's meant to be. I think it's kind of based on this poem that was about William Wallace, not necessarily. And his life was a bit mysterious, so it takes some. I don't get why not go with the truth and then make it romantic and exciting. Often, you don't have to make it too complicated to still have that power. Why do you have to change things? I don't get it. Anyway, now I'm just saying whatever comes to mind. I like the other actors. Brendan Gleeson is good, and that Irish guy is kind of funny. And I like how they established that he was sort of he seemed kind of dodgy, but I guess we find out he's trustworthy because he saves William Wallace. So then, and that's an interesting thing. I find in real life there are people I trust to some degree, and others I don't so much. And it's a lot of it's based on experience and past experience that you develop over time. There's a reason for it, and as soon as someone does something dodgy or wrong, that's when you take away the trust. It's funny, even some things I don't even think about, like with family or with certain people you're close to, you don't even worry about. You just leave your wallet, you leave money, you leave phone. Like you would never. It's funny, you didn't never even think about that being an issue. Whereas other people, it is more of an issue. It's an interesting thing. Okay, again, I'm going off topic. That other character that keeps the older guy, Brendan Gleeson's father, I think that was very sad when he passed. Spoiler alert. When he passed away, that was a very touching moment. It felt very real. I think again the performance was very good from Brendan Gleeson, but it's funny that he keeps getting injured. He gets like an arrow, he gets his hand chopped off, he gets an axe to the stomach. I think that might be the one that eventually kills him. I don't know, just sort of shows how tough he is. That stuff also like terrifies me. This Braveheart kind of shows also at the end of some of the battles you can hear some of the moaning, you can see some of the people still moving. And like, that's the thing. People would have some of them would have been fatally wounded, but just die slowly over 6 hours or something, several hours after the battle. Or some of them would have to have a leg cut off to survive, or all kinds of things. Like, there'd be people that might survive for a couple of weeks before dying from complications. Like, it's really terrifying. That's the thing. It's not, a lot of this is much cleaner if you look away, if you just think, they had battles and here are the numbers, the statistics, but okay, real life, it's absolutely terrifying. We're speaking of which, getting to the ending, when he's tortured, again, it's kind of profound. It's kind of cool that the princess kind of gives him this thing to dull his pain, and he's like, no, throws it away. Well, he convinces her that he's taken it, but then spits it out. It's interesting. It's like, I guess if you are going to die, you may as well feel everything, I don't know. People that might have different opinions on this. But yeah, it really builds things up, like the anticipation and the way he says, he feels scared. Like, it's terrifying. And apparently in real life, though, it was worse than what's depicted in the movie. People used to get hung, drawn, and quartered, right? Which, yeah, hung until they could barely breathe, until they nearly died, so stretched. I guess that's in the movie, but then also castrated, basically, or there's some other words for it. Other words for cutting off genitals and cutting out intestines, beheading and cutting apart the limbs and then putting them in different places. Like, it's so disturbing. And there are kids present in the movie. I don't know if that was the case back then. If so, I mean, that's insane. I guess it sends a message, and it was, again, I get the impression it was not necessarily that common. I don't know, but it was more for like serious, like real, like high treason. If you've like betrayed the king or something, or directly. Like you've deliberately, if you're a spy and you cause them to lose a battle, I don't know, something like that. It is tragic that he gets betrayed. I didn't really understand that. In the movie, it's like Robert the Bruce's father who has leprosy. Again, I don't know if that's really true, which is it's frustrating. I want a story that's based on something real, but I guess it's kind of like because they're very loosely based on a real person, a real story, but it's meant to be kind of universal. I almost feel like I might enjoy it more if it was completely fictional, because then at least there's no need to complain about historical inaccuracy. And if anything, you might say it has some parallels to this William Wallace guy, and it also maybe has some parallels to other things. But anyway, it's kind of like don't pretend to be based on a true story. It's better to be its own thing, but it has some real similarities to things. Some other inaccuracies. Apparently, they didn't have the blue face paint back then, or they didn't. I don't know if it's face paint, but they didn't do that, and I don't think they had kilts yet, or that they didn't have that pattern. To me, that's not so major because it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It still helps people see like the difference between the armies. That's the thing. I don't think the English armies had uniforms back then either. But like you still have to make a movie, and it's a practical thing as well. In the movie Dunkirk, which is very historically accurate overall, like there's a lot of pains made. There's certain compromises. So for example, Nolan uses ships from close to Dunkirk, but I think he had French ones, which are not quite the same as the British ones used at Dunkirk in, where was it, 1940. 1940. Now he could have done CGI and perfectly recreated certain ships from Dunkirk, but that might not have been as effective. He did something that's about as good as you can possibly do. And with the he used real Spitfires and other real planes and things from that time. But some of them they had certain markings on them that they didn't actually have at that particular time. They didn't get that marking on them until 2 years later or something. But he kept it because it just helps distinguish. It makes it easier to tell between the British and the German. And to me, that's a logical, practical kind of thing. And it's a bit the same, I think, with the kilts and the uniforms and the face paint. That doesn't bother me so much. It's the other aspects of the story, like especially when it changes who the character is or who other characters are, or when it overly dramatizes things. I liked the lady who played his first wife, or his wife in the movie. She was very sort of pretty and nice. I didn't really like the early romance with him and her that much, only because it feels like that was all that was going on. It's just romance, and I kind of prefer when there's multiple layers going on at the same time. But I guess in contrast with the rest of the movie, it's important to set that up as a really strong thing. And he kind of dreams of her later. And then when when he's being tortured and about to be beheaded, he sees her in the crowd. It's just kind of surreal. And it's like, again, whether you're religious or not, I think everyone can relate to that kind of feeling of like sometimes we want escapism. If we're in a scary situation, we want something that's comforting. We want to believe when we die we go to heaven or something, and that we're going to be with the people we love or care about. We're going to be somewhere happy, where we're free, where all our pain is gone and everything is peaceful. And it's quite powerful. And when he yells out freedom, it's really powerful. His speech on the horse is very cool as well. I'm a big fan of freedom in general. I really do like that principle. Although again, that's where I feel like it gets a little bit undermined, because it reminds me of Life of Brian, where they're like, what have the Romans ever done for us? And it's like, oh, the aqueducts, the roads, the law, education. I don't know. I forget what they list, but all these things. It's like, okay, but apart from the roads, education, all these, it just feels similar. Like, I don't know that England was really evil and like controlling Scotland. They may have brought quite a bit of a prosperity and structure. And for example, I'm pretty sure later on, like around the 17th, 18th century, many Scottish people deliberately learned English to try to help themselves progress. And they progressed very quickly around that time. Like Adam Smith and David Hume were Scottish. There were quite a lot of Scots that did a lot of stuff around that time. But just in general, I'm against oppression, but I think a lot of colonies are kind of like that, where the colonizers are actually, they're not that evil, and they often offer like structure and services that are kind of better than what may have existed otherwise. Anyway, having said that, I do like the idea of like independence, freedom, fighting for that. And it simplifies things. At least, okay, in the movie, the English are kind of the bad guys. The king, especially, is evil. I did like in the battle scenes the tactics they showed. Even if a lot of it was made up, it was kind of exciting. Like the way they moon the enemy, the English. And then when the arrows come, they block. And the one where he tells some of their cavalry to go away, like but back around, so that the enemy thinks they're just chicken, and then the cavalry comes at them, and then at the last second they pull up the pikes or the spikes, the long pole things, pointy things. I thought that was a good idea. And in another, and then of course, eventually they come back behind. That's pretty cool. I guess the Battle of Stirling Bridge, there was some smart tactics. We just didn't get to see those particular ones. And there's a part with the burning where they've already set up lots of oil or tar or something flammable. That was pretty clever. But again, brutal. Like just I mean, these are still human beings. There's a part where just after his wife has been killed, and that's really tough as well. The slitting the throat. But he approaches and he's just on a horse. And I thought, what's he planning on doing? And one of the guys comes and uses slow motion really well, and then you just see gets and then just smashes that guy, and you see that guy's face in slow motion for a while. He's just some guy, and he's gonna get just brutally hit in the head. Ah, it's yeah. I also found it was a bit like Game of Thrones, like the twist when those two guys kind of left. I forget that they betray him basically. They're there on their horses with their army, and then they just kind of leave. And Longshanks sort of says how he paid them off. He doubled, and one of them didn't. He didn't even have to offer them much for them to take it. That's kind of messed up. And yeah, when he nearly gets William Wallace nearly gets killed or defeated, and it manages to escape just barely. Robert the Bruce, I guess, thinks twice. But that, again, I don't really like that person who's conflicted and they kind of betray you and then, oh, they change their mind. It's like, you still betrayed them. Okay, I think I'll pretty much leave it there. So I think yeah, historical accuracy is not its strength, but it's still a powerful movie. There's not many movies like that that can really rouse you and that are about something. Either have values, good acting, good music, kind of epic, and one of the first of its kind. I know there's other epic movies, but like done realistically, and kind of it's kind of bold. It's a good movie, and I don't know if it's just a feel good movie, but it feels kind of profound. It's about humanity. Everyone can relate to that, fighting for your freedom and fearing evil and fearing being tortured or killed and being in love and how you would feel if your loved one was killed or being in an oppressive society or situation. It's powerful stuff. Anyway, all right, I'll leave it there. Bye.